Stay tuned for Cardinal Television. Commotion is coming up next. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this semester's first episode of Commotion. I am your guest host, Caitlin Murphy. As always, the rules of Commotion are as follows. 3 panelists will be given 6 topics to discuss, rant, and rave about. At the end of the show, the panelist with the best argument will be chosen by yours truly as the winner, and then get 30 seconds of free airtime to discuss whatever is on their mind. And now, for our inaugural first 3 guests, first we have Jake Tinker. And next is Olivia Weil. And then last but certainly not least is Evan Bortiste. Good luck, guys, and let's get started. New York City was struck by a random attacker who planted 2 bombs near the streets of Manhattan. One bomb went off, injuring 29, and the other was detonated by the police. The man, Aman Khan Rahami, was also linked to 3 failed explosions in New Jersey and was detained by police after a shootout after the first explosion in Manhattan took place. The NYPD required all residents and businessmen on the street where the explosion took place to show valid ID before entering any buildings. Do you think this was a necessary requirement due to the circumstances, or is this an overreach of government as it's not legally required to possess an ID on you at all times? Evan, why don't you get started?
I think this was absolutely necessary at a time like this. They say desperate times call for desperate measures, and I'm pretty sure a bomber on the loose would count as a desperate measure. But the whole problem with this is that police cannot legally search you without a warrant, unless you're under martial law or something to that equivalent. But I do believe that the police would have sincerely regretted it if a bomber had entered a building and bombed that building at a time like this. So I think this is a matter of privacy over security.
All right, what do you think, Olivia?
I agree with Evan, and it is required for everyone to be safe. And even though it's a long process, there's a lot to go through with checking everyone, but it should be in a time like that. Yeah.
All right, Tink.
Well, I mean, it goes to what Evan says. It's about being safe. And I mean, it's not really that bad. How hard is it to just, I keep my license in my wallet and then that's always on me. So how hard is it just reach in your pocket, grab your ID, and just go back into your building like your day can go on? Because really, you're just making it harder on yourself if you're just going to put up a giant fuss about it. I get you want your privacy, but it's just asking for some photo ID. It's not asking you personal questions. It's not treating you as a hostile witness. It's trying to protect you. It's trying to have your best interest at heart. So I really think it's just as simple as keep your ID on you and just show it to them real quick. That's all they want.
I'm going to have to be a devil's advocate here because this attack did take place in New York City, and there are a very large percentage of people who don't have driver's licenses because there's public transportation. What about the people who do not have ID? Because as it said, it's not legally required for us to have it.
See, that's a great point there, and you're right. So I guess that's kind of where this giant problem comes in. To be honest with you, I think that if they don't have an ID, they can just, I really don't know what you can do with that situation. I mean, it's not like you can just have your passport on you all the time. So I guess in that instance, it's more of just they're going to have to take your word on it, or some kind of system's going to have to be instituted to work with that. But honestly, I do not know with that one. So.
Do you guys have any input on that?
Yeah, here's what I think. I think the whole point of this was so the police could look at every individual person and see if he was the criminal that they were going after. So I think that this bought the police a lot of time. It allowed them to pinpoint a couple of people in a very crowded area. And I think that if somebody did not have their ID on them, then they would definitely not be tackled or something like that. They would instead be looked at. If they met the description of the criminal, then they would be let into or if they did not meet the description of the criminal, they'd be let into the building.
All right. Now, the situation here is that they didn't know who the criminal was at the time. Do you think if they had not taken IDs, it would have taken us longer to find the criminal?
I believe so.
All right. Well, good start, guys. We'll go on to the next question. A key oil pipeline, which goes from Houston, Texas, all the way to New Jersey, has leaked in Birmingham, Alabama, causing not only harmful chemicals to leak into the ground and possibly the water, but also a gas shortage and price hike for the South, and possibly for the entire East Coast if this issue isn't fixed soon. This comes during a time when Native Americans are protesting the North Dakota pipeline, which would run through their native grounds and sacred waters. Is it time for oil to go in favor of other alternative fuels? What other options do we have as a country? Let's start with Olivia on this one.
Well, it would be hard to switch out of oil because there's it's very expensive to do like alternative, like solar power, and like there's like not a lot of cars that like run but off of gas, so it would just be like really difficult to find another source for like power and like transportation.
All right, you guys got anything to go for or against that?
Well, I mean, it's kind of been a long time running. This country's always had a history of problems with the oil and prices being shot up when there was some monopolies out in the Middle East and how the prices went up. I can remember when I first started driving, gas was like $3.50 plus. So it was kind of ridiculous to go fill up. So just the fact that oil's been around for so long and it's just been depended on for so long, eventually it's just going to be out and we're going to be scrambling for a natural resource. So I think the time has come. I mean, in other countries like Brazil, I've heard of sugarcane used as a substitute. We've heard of water power. We've heard of solar power. We've heard of wind power. So, I mean, there have been environmentalists that have been on this for a while, but I think it comes down to they're trying not to step on anyone's toes that's trying to make a profit right now. You know, these are kind of kept under wrap so that the oil companies can keep making their process. But at the same time, when the oil finally hits zero and everyone's out, we've got the backups here. So it's moving on to the next big profit is what it is.
Evan?
I think the main problem with these pipelines is that they are so poorly planned out. The main reason that they wanted to build the North Dakota pipeline is because it would bring oil prices a lot down in rural America, which haven't been as fortunate as we are in New York to have all these oil prices go down. So I think the problem with pipelines is that they're so unpredictable, and even a small leak could potentially destroy an entire city. And I think that instead of having pipelines, we should instead truck in oil, like we've been doing in rural America for the past couple of years. And yes, I definitely think it's time to find a new natural resource that could support us as opposed to oil. And I really commend Tesla for trying to find a car that could be powered completely on electric. I think that's going to be the real key, electric cars.
Now, do you think we will see like affordable electric cars sometime in the future? Because you mentioned Tesla, but unfortunately, I think the cheapest Tesla goes for about $100,000 right now. So do you think that is going to be an available resource to middle class and lower class citizens?
Eventually. I mean, it just takes time to because we're so dependent on the gas and the oil and everything that's so bad for the environment. It's hard to find another way that everyone can afford, but definitely technology will advance and everyone will be able to afford a car that runs on electric.
I mean, it goes back to history, and the Model T was expensive when it first came out, and then they learned how to mass produce it, and then pretty soon everyone had one. So I think the big thing here is just once the mass production kicks in, once the technology allows you to duplicate it over and over and make it just a cheap option, that's when we'll really see it become affordable.
All right, well, that was a great start, you guys, and we're going to be coming back to our questions after this break.
Hi, may I please have an application? Thank you.
Skip the drama. Get your diploma.
Okay.
Take that first step towards a better future. Find free adult education classes at finishyourdiploma.org.
Welcome back to Commotion. Let's continue the discussion. Whether you love or hate him, there's no denying the fact that Donald Trump has definitely shaken up the status quo for American elections. Despite his inexperience in politics, his poll numbers remain high. He and Hillary Clinton are virtually tied. His involvement in the race, as well as Clinton's, has also led to many people looking at third-party candidates more often than normal. Voters have also been more vocal in their distaste for the political norm, as well as for both parties. This begs the question, does the election of 2016 mark the beginning of the end for the traditional American two-party system? Let's start with Tink.
Well, it definitely is a lot more discussion out there. Recently I've heard a lot of negative comments. It's either they're voting for Trump because they hate Hillary, or they're not voting at all, or just a bunch of negative comments. So it's kind of frustrating to hear that so many people just want to walk away and just not let their voice be heard because they just feel they have no choice. Either way, they lose in this situation. When it comes to the third-party system, though, it's not something that's typically new. We've seen it once or twice every once in a while. Around the time Abraham Lincoln was elected, there was kind of the whole split with the Civil War oncoming. And then about 30 years later, during the before World War I, it was Woodrow Wilson, Teddy Roosevelt, and William Howard Taft who were actually the three main competitors. Teddy Roosevelt obviously running for the Progressive Party at the time. So when he ran, it kind of split the vote, and that's what gave Woodrow Wilson. He kind of divided the Republican Party. And that's kind of what the third parties, it hasn't necessarily done it yet, but it kind of just acts as a third option there. And kind of as some elections aren't quite as fit as past have been, that's when the third party might steal some votes, and all of a sudden what looked like a clear win for maybe the Republican Party all of a sudden was kind of spoiled because a third party was intervened. So,
Great. Olivia, do you have any input?
I don't think there's an end to the two-party system, but it was a definitely big hiccup in politics and everything because of all the drama and all the scandals going on. It's not the end. It's just a weird time.
Okay, good point. Evan?
Well, if you look at the majority of democracies across the world, it is usually a two-party system, whether it's a recent democracy that switched from a more monocratic government or a very old democracy. I don't believe that this is the end of the two-party system, but I believe that these parties are going to switch. If you remember back in the times of Abraham Lincoln, the Republican Party believed in a very strong central government in addition to the end of slavery, while the Democratic Party didn't like the idea of a strong central government, and they were very much pro-slavery. I think that over time, these parties have completely switched around. So now it's the Republican Party that is the one who believes in states' rights, as opposed to the Democratic Party. So I believe that this is definitely going to change the average stereotypes of these parties. But no, I do not believe that this is going to be the end of the two-party system.
Now, I know we were all a little young to remember this without having to look it up, but in the 2000 election versus Gore and Bush Jr., a lot of people say that the third-party candidate, Nader, was the reason that Gore didn't get elected because so many votes went towards him. So do you think that's going to have another situation? Could Gary Johnson get enough votes to stop Hillary Clinton from becoming president, or vice versa?
I think it definitely could, just because, like you said, we saw it in that case. We saw it with Roosevelt getting so many votes back then, that it's happened before, and that's kind of what democracy is all about. It's not being limited in your choices. It's that we do have all these choices. We have these third parties here because we can vote for them. It's not just you have to pick Republican or Democrat. You can be an independent. You can vote for whoever you want. And that's what makes the country great. You're not limited in your choice. You can choose who you want.
All right, good points. Now on to Canada, our neighbors up north. They have recently legalized prescription heroin. The substance, also called diacetylmorphine, is said to have helped patients severely addicted to heroin slowly wean themselves off of the drug if they do not respond to other treatments by giving them less and less of the substance each time it is administered. The Canadian government says that any patient given the drug will be closely monitored by their doctor as it is administered. Do you think weaning people off of heroin through controlled injections is a good idea? And European countries such as Germany and Sweden have also adopted this. Should the United States? Let's start with Evan.
I think that this idea had very good intentions, but I also think it'd be very hard to control this. Don't forget that all these people are getting prescription pain medication for things that shouldn't even qualify as just minor prescriptions, such as I know that there's a lot of doctors prescribing fentanyl out there, which is a very strong prescription drug for things that people don't need. I think it'd be a very similar situation if they were to prescribe heroin for recovering heroin addicts. And I think that there are a bunch of really great drugs out there that could control heroin better than just a dose of heroin to control it.
All right, Olivia?
I think it's a good idea in theory, but there could be like flaws in it, like you were saying. But I think people who are addicted to something and they have no other option, if they're under a lot of like supervision, then it's okay. Because most of the time, like if they have a problem with a substance, it's not their fault. Like maybe they're in a dark place, maybe, who knows. But I think it is a good idea.
Well, it definitely is, because like it says, it's almost a last-ditch effort. It's not the first instance, it's more just your plan Z, you know? You don't immediately go there, you have the supervision, but there is still the flaw in it. I mean, you know, people have like Nicoderm patches to try and quit smoking, but, you know, they still smoke. So sometimes even trying to fight the addiction with the actual source of the addiction, it sounds like a good plan in theory, but sometimes people just can't break their addictions. They just stay with them. So I think it's just one of those things that you test it out now and you kind of just see where it takes you. It doesn't immediately have to be the replace all plan. Like this says, it's kind of a last-ditch effort.
Now, I think this definitely goes without saying that it looks like the whole entire world is having a heroin epidemic, not just the United States. What do you think, if any, solutions besides this do we have to do this, to take care of that?
Well, I know that there have been doctors who have been prescribing morphine to help patients cope with heroin addiction. And according to recent studies, that is proven to be effective. I'm not sure if it's more effective than actual heroin, but I do believe that it would be easier to control than actual heroin being prescribed.
Anyone else got any ideas?
I mean, it's a tough situation with anything, and there are, you know, some people who have told stories about having withdrawal issues and all the issues that come with coming off of a drug addiction. So, I mean, if you're kind of minimizing it and trying to make the pain as the least possible pain possible for a person, that's probably your best option, you know, just kind of keep them from not losing hope. You know, they don't have to necessarily go cold turkey, but these are damaging drugs. These are things that kind of hurt people and the people around them, so it's just dangerous any way you look at it.
All right, well, this was another great discussion. We have 2 more questions left before our panelists, before I pick the winner, but first, we'll take a break.
You've messed up your son's haircut.
Mom?
Do you A, try to fix it,
Like it never happened.
B, work with what you got, or C, show solidarity?
Thank you, baby.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
And welcome to our final segment of this episode of Commotion. France has recently become the first country to ban plastic disposable plates and cups. The law requires that all disposable tableware be made of 50% biologically sourced materials by 2020 and 60% by 2025. The law, which also bans plastic bags, was created with the intent to make France greener by cutting down on the landfill waste. The ban has been met with resistance by the plastic industry, who is obviously the biggest loser in this law. Should the United States consider passing similar regulations? Let's get started with Olivia.
I think it's a really good idea. It might take longer than 4 years, but I don't see a lot of people using plastic plates. I mean, maybe paper, but that is recyclable. So I guess it would be a little easier taking away plastic. And also, I don't know how France works, but kind of like Wegmans, you know how they have their reusable bags? I think it would be easier if people just bought those and used those instead of plastic.
Right. Tink?
I think you're definitely right. Just some of the landfills over the years have just kind of piled up, and there's been more and more garbage. So if you can kind of cut into that and kind of make it better. You know, there was a saying that my dad used to say when I was little. He used to say that he wanted to leave the planet better for us than what came to him. So what he wanted was that the world was greener. It was there wasn't pollution, you know, because obviously back in like the 70s and 80s there were the big pollution problems. But you know, trying to make the world greener, and that's kind of what I think our generation needs to do, is make the world greener. You know, for the next on and on and on. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't want my niece running around at some creek and all of a sudden she gets her foot stuck in a plastic ring from a soda bottle or any other of those plastic products. So getting greener is definitely the way to go.
All right, Evan?
I think sometimes laws are the only way to make people consciously greener. One really good report I read on NPR was about this book called Bottled and Sold. It was about the multi-million-dollar plastic bottle industry and how much it's hurting our economy, and also just creating all this gigantic waste. Americans use 85 million bottles per day of water, which is completely obscene. After all, it is a free resource. All you need is just a container to put it in. Mm-hmm. I think most of this, it comes out of convenience. Like, let's say you're at a party, or one example is Cardinal TV parties that we have. All those are disposable. I think it would be quite hard to use non-disposable things, but I think after years of getting into this habit of not using disposable things, we can manage.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think price has a factor in this? Because like you mentioned the CTV party, like I think we can speak for all of us when I say we're a bunch of poor college kids, and generally plastic cups are like $1 for 20 at Wegmans. Do you think it would also help to use less plastic if we made like the permanent ones like glass plates and all that cheaper?
I mean, yeah. It does kind of come down to a cost thing eventually. And that seems to be what everything kind of revolves around, is the cost. But I mean, it definitely makes it easier. I know I found like the cheap little plates that I just keep in my room, and those are real easy. You know, just wash them off, scrub them, throw them back in like the little tote, and they're good to go again. So I mean, if you kind of have like a plastic-ish plate, not the actual plastic, like the
China.
Yeah, it's almost like China almost, but it doesn't break. So kind of plates like that are like really cheap, and you can just wash them, throw them back in, and reuse them again. So those are definitely cost efficient and real easy to clean.
All right, any one last point we make before we move on to the last question?
Have you considered asking Lackman for some plastic plates or cups?
I have not considered asking them for plastic plates or cups. I actually have bought glass cups, but that might be nice for our parties.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right.
Let's do that from now on.
Now our last and final question, with a name that I know all of us are probably tired of hearing. Colin Kaepernick, the 49ers quarterback, began his national anthem protest on August 26 and has done nothing but spread and escalate ever since. However, what's new is that athletes are beginning to be punished for partaking in the protests. Broncos linebacker Brandon Marshall lost 2 endorsement deals due to kneeling during the national anthem. The Broward County Sheriff's Department has threatened to end police escorts for Miami Dolphins players, and the U.S. women's national soccer player Megan Rapinoe may be suspended from the national team due to her kneeling during the national anthem. Are these punishments warranted? Let's start with Evan.
Well, first of all, I'd be really annoyed if I was Colin Kaepernick, because these people the media is focusing on just the act of him kneeling during the national anthem, which, by the way, he was kneeling with his hand on his heart, showing it was more of a pain than hate for America, which some crazy people have said, including Ted Cruz, who said that this was an insult to the American flag and American heroes, which is just completely ridiculous. So what this movement is basically about is that Afro Americans have been absent in so much of history. We talk about, in history class, we talk about how our nation is so free and the ideas of all men are created equal, but really those are all hypocritical things. And in history, we don't focus enough on those. This motion all originated during the Black Panthers movement in the 1950s, when there were very educated African American people who participated in things like this. Another example would be that they read what a policeman was supposed to do while he was doing his duty, which sparked a lot of controversy. But yeah, I definitely think that these people should not be punished for this. This is definitely free speech, and free speech is important in America.
All right, Olivia?
I agree with you. The actual action is considered very disrespectful, but the point that they are making is the right freedom of speech, right? And I don't think they should be punished for it. I mean, if they pulled a Kanye West with Taylor Swift, stopping national, that would be punishable, but they were silently protesting. So it wasn't really a distraction than what people are making it out to be.
Okay, Jake?
See, this is kind of the problem, is that here it is, they're making their protest and they're trying to make a statement, but at the same time, rather than admit there's a problem, there's a cast-off, there's a blame. It's a shift in blame. Rather than say, we have a problem here, it's they're un-American because they are not respecting the tradition. This is part of our tradition. This is, you might as well not like apple pie. You're being un-American. And I think one of the big things, though, is that Colin Kaepernick realizes if he doesn't say anything, this is just going to go on and on and on. Sports has always been a copycat game, whether it's the tactics in the actual games or when protests are made. I know back when baseball first started integrating, it was Jackie Robinson being able to protest and actually be in the game and showing that he belonged there. That's what started the conversation, and that's what started integration, and then it caught on in the rest of America. So I think this is one of those things where everyone has to stand their ground. Like Brandon Marshall, he lost his endorsements, but he was right back there at Mile High, and he was kneeling again before the Colts game because he believes this is a cause to fight for. He believes that if the NFL, the MLB, NBA, whatever major sports franchises, if they don't fight for this, no one will.
It's completely true, and I think I can speak for everyone when I say that it'll be interesting to see 20, 30 years from now how our children will learn about this time period that we're currently in. Well, this was a great discussion, but we have to wrap it up. Each of our panelists did a great job making their voices heard, but only one can be chosen as tonight's winner. And I choose Evan as tonight's winner. Congratulations. As promised, you will get your 30 seconds to talk about whatever you want, but first, to catch more Commotion and other Cardinal Television programs, tune into Time Warner Cable Channel 12 or check us out on Facebook at Cardinal Television Fisher. Thanks for watching Commotion. Take it away, Evan.
I think I'm going to do something that nobody's ever done before.